Hello, everyone who has joined us. This is Ukrainian Forum Media Center, and right now we have our next speaker here in the studio. This is Serhii Babak, Member of Parliament, the head of the Committee on Education, Science and Innovations. We are going to discuss the work of the schools and admission campaign in the universities. Let us begin with the schools. What is the algorithm for this year's graduates to get their documents? Well, all children will get their certificates on the complete secondary education. Even if they have left for a different country and they don't have any contact with their school, they can connect to the schools providing remote services, and that school will request a certificate for them. There should be no problems with that, and the certificates will be delivered to their country of current residence. And what about the exams? We know that the general independent assessment is off this year, so what is the procedure? After the first weeks of the war, we understood that this year we would not have the external assessment the way it was envisioned by the law. But because of the needs of the admission campaign, we have simplified a procedure of external assessment. This is a united national multidiscipline test. It will include Ukrainian language, mathematics, and Ukrainian history. So the two first ones were mandatory, and the third one was selected because of the current situation, because of the war. So this will be multiple choice test, and it will be possible to split it into sessions, into 3 sessions, and there will be 28 days available for those tests to be passed. So if someone is abroad, if they did not complete the task on time, they will still have chance to continue the test and sign up for another day. So if our children do not have opportunity to physically get the certificate, will there be any online version of it? But in this case, I'll ask why they need the certificate. It depends on the educational institution they are entering. It's just a question of time. So we were thinking to introduce certificates in the DIA application, but there are issues with the registers. There need to be some changes introduced to the legislation, so we do not have time for that. But since next year, I think we will have those e-documents certifying education. And what about the children who are in the temporarily occupied territories? How can they complete this current educational year? Well, we enabled the founders of schools, the military administrations, local administrations to define the time of the study year, and in some regions this year is already complete, specifically in the territories under temporary occupation. And for those regions, that's the most problematic situation in terms of passing the multidisciplinary test, because to pass the test, one has to be present at the government-controlled territory, otherwise we cannot verify the child. But we are also getting our territory back, liberating them. We hope for the liberation to happen as fast as possible. So once we are liberating the territories, we are introducing tests on those liberated areas. There is no final solution, and it's difficult to predict what will happen. We do not have any unified solution. So we understand that many children have temporarily left the territory of Ukraine, and we understand that some of them already started studying at schools abroad. Some of them continue to study in Ukrainian schools. Yes, according to UN, 8 million people left. The number is changeable because some people are coming back, some people are leaving, but over the last days we can see more people coming back. And still we understand that if 8 million people left, these are usually women and children, so half of them are children. And for us, as a nation, it's very important to provide continuous education to them so that they do not lose time. Statistically, 80% of school-aged children abroad continue their learning remotely in Ukrainian schools. In some cases, of course, these connections were lost, but any Ukrainian school providing services online, such as Optima or the International Ukrainian School run by the government, they are available online. And also some part of the children are attending schools at their current country of location. There's nothing bad about that. We work closely with countries in Europe, and wherever Ukrainian schools were not available, actually they are not numerous, we requested the countries to establish Ukrainian classes in their schools. And many countries actually provided us classrooms, provided the infrastructure wherever there are big numbers of Ukrainian children. So our educators, our teachers who have left the country are providing this education to Ukrainian children according to the Ukrainian curricula. So the majority of children are covered this way. They are not losing their right to education, but still there is a lot of work to do. And for the children who are abroad, will they have a chance to pass the test there? Yes, we are working for every EU country with sufficiently big numbers of Ukrainians residing there to be available to have locations for passing the tests. We are working with local universities and other educational institutions. We need classrooms with computers for children to be able to come there and to pass the exam. It will be available in every country. What about the admissions campaign? It will be different from the previous ones. We cannot model the final shape of how it will look like and which universities will be in the highest demand. We assume that in Western Ukraine, the numbers of popular universities will be higher. In Eastern and part of Ukraine, unfortunately, less so. But we have some mechanisms to support the system running, and after the admissions campaign, we will see what choices were actually made by our graduates. Right now, we have numbers similar to those that we had in the previous years, but speaking of the specific universities that the children pick, this will be seen later. And what about the documents for the admission? Well, COVID has already forced us to make some changes, so all the documents are submitted digitally in the online office, and for those starting their school from the first form, there is no need to physically come with the child to be admitted. And the children in the temporarily occupied territories, will they be able to apply online digitally? Yes, they are doing this already. Dear friends, do you have any questions? Can you please tell about the outcomes of this training year in the occupied territories? What are the plans for the next year? Are there any attempts of collaboration and attempts to issue Russian certificates of education? Thank you for your question. It's actually quite complex and complicated. The situation is different in different places. Some schools have completed their study year. Some schools are on hold, so to speak, where the occupational and de facto governments demand them to work following the Russian curriculum. And in this case, according to the Criminal Code of Ukraine, this would be collaboration with the enemy. This would entail criminal responsibility. So the algorithm was developed long ago. If the school has seen such danger, they can announce putting the school on hold. So by the decision of the military administration, the school stops operation. The teachers and the management of the school keep their positions and keep 2/3 of their pay. That's the only legal algorithm that does not meet the definition of collaborationism. We do not know about any attempts of Russians to issue their certificates of education in the newly occupied regions this year, but we surely understand that in many newly occupied regions, since the next study year, they want to introduce Russian curricula, they want to introduce instruction in 2 languages, and we strongly encourage not to collaborate with the enemy. We will surely liberate and deoccupy the territories, and the things that people can do now can entail grave circumstances. Hello, I'm Viktor Melnikov from CGTN. So the martial law was recently extended. What measures are taken in education? Are there any special lectures in psychology? And what is the process with getting the certificates? Over the 3 months of war, we have been working 24/7 to keep our system ready to withstand all the challenges, and we are surely getting ready for the next study year. We want to start the normal instruction in school on September 1st. Despite of the war, people have to work, the economy has to work, children need to be educated, so that's no-brainer for us. The certificates do not pose any problem this year. They will be issued. Speaking of the psychological condition of children, we do understand that the majority of people stay in the zones close to the military conflict, those who had to leave their homeland for another country, they will have some post-traumatic stress disorder in one way or another. And this issue of psychological assistance, so psychological correction, is something necessary for every one of us. And the ministry has already talked to many, to several at least, charity funds, and the First Lady has did so too. The idea is to provide psychological support to all Ukrainians who suffered from the war. The international students, is there anything done for them to come back after the following study year? Well, that's a difficult issue. Before the war, Ukraine had 1.5% of the world's entire population of international students. We were very effective in this. Unfortunately, because of the war, the majority of international students have left. Ukraine. Part of them are actually staying in Western Ukraine, and big universities with big numbers of international students right now have other physical offices in Western Ukraine in order to continue offline training for those students in Western Ukraine. Of course, we have lost a large share of them, but for them to come back, we need to stop this war. We need to rebuild the things that were destroyed, and I believe that we will be inviting international students with enthusiasm even higher than before. Speaking of training and speaking of the curricular, are there any changes planned in such disciplines as history? Yes, we keep working on that. It's an ongoing process. We have institutes working to update the curricular. So changes were being planned before the war, and right now, because of the war, history, world literature, and Russian language, etc. All of these training courses will be updated, and of course, entire institutes are working to develop those changes. We, of course, have to respond in one way or another to what is happening, and we will see what our institutes develop. Thank you for joining us. This was Serhii Babak, Member of Parliament. Thank you for being with us, and our next briefing is going